Biscuit was a small but mighty dog. In fact, many people describe him as a tiny warrior, even though he was really just a small, fluffy ginger cockapoo with big, sparkling eyes that were always full of wonder. With his bouncy curls and constantly wagging tail, he looked like a ball of energy on four legs wherever he went. And boy, did he love to go places. Every morning, when the sun peeked over the hills, Biscuit would wiggle out of bed and bounce down the stairs ready for a brand new day of sniffing, exploring, and having fun. He wasn't just any dog. He was a dog with a mission. You see, Biscuit believed every day was an adventure waiting to happen. And he was right. One crisp morning, while Biscuit was playing in the garden, he spotted something magical floating past his nose. It was a shiny bubble, round and shimmering in the sunlight. Biscuit had seen bubbles before, of course. Every dog has, right? But this one seemed different. Maybe it was the way it danced in the light or how perfectly still it hovered in the air. Whatever the reason, Biscuit knew he had to do something incredible. So with wide eyes and a wagging tail, he pounced. But pop, the bubble disappeared. Confused but excited, Biscuit began a silly chase as more bubbles floated into the garden. He chased them through the tall grass, leaping and twirling, and even doing a little dance as he went. Sometimes he barked at the bubbles, thinking they might be able to hear him. Other times, he just stared at them in wonder. For a little dog with a big imagination, these bubbles weren't just soapy spheres. They were magical companions on an exciting quest. Now, you might think all this bubble blowing was just a game. Well, it kinda was, but it was also a challenge. A challenge for Biscuit to use his super sniffing skills to catch that sneaky soap suds. And let me tell you, Biscuit was up for it. As Biscuit raced around the garden, he sniffed the ground, trying to catch the bubbles' scent. He even tried to paw at them, but those bubbles were too quick for him. They bounced and bobbed just out of his reach, making him dizzy with delight. One minute, he was leaping over a flower bed. The next, he was sliding down a muddy bank, barking with laughter. But wait a second. Do you hear that? Someone else was giggling too. It was the kids who had been blowing the bubbles. They watched Biscuit playing, their faces full of glee. And when they saw how much fun he was having, they started blowing even more bubbles, filling the air with shimmering magic. And Biscuit, well, he kept on chasing. Suddenly, a particularly large bubble landed right in a puddle. Pop! The water splashed everywhere, leaving Biscuit with a face full of mud. He shook himself, sending droplets flying, then sneezed, blowing bubbles out of both his nose and mouth. What a funny sight that was! He chased another bubble that floated behind a bush and ended up with socks on his ears after a very surprising tumble. Then, oh dear, he found himself stuck in a prickly rose bush. He barked for help, and the children came running. When they saw how embarrassed he was, they couldn't help but laugh. They helped him free his tangled paws and teased him about his muddy face. But Biscuit didn't mind. He was too busy licking the children's hands, his tail wagging furiously. Then, pop, a giant bubble drifted high above them, floating like a balloon in the sky. Biscuit took off after it, jumping over bushes and leaping through the air. He barked excitedly, urging the bubble to keep going higher. And the children followed, their laughter echoing in the garden. Biscuit loved bubbles. They reminded him of cotton candy clouds in the sky or marshmallows floating in hot cocoa. Each one was a surprise, a burst of joy that made him want to dance. As he ran, he rolled over in the grass, feeling the tickle of blades between his toes. He spun round in circles, his tongue lolling out in a happy pant. He even tried to catch one with his paws, but they slipped through his fingers like water. The children kept blowing bubbles, and Biscuit kept on chasing. He barked and jumped and tumbled, never catching one, but never giving up either. To him, the bubbles were more than just soap and water. They were his friends, playing hide and seek in the summer breeze. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Biscuit felt a surge of happiness. It wasn't about catching the bubbles, but about the joy of the chase, the thrill of the hunt, and most of all, the laughter that filled the garden. He was just a small dog with a big heart and an even bigger imagination. And he wouldn't have traded this day for all the bubbles in the world. He raced across the lawn, dodging flower pots and leaping over tree roots. The bubbles bobbed just out of reach, teasing him with their shimmering reflections. One moment he was diving under a bush, the next he was twirling in a patch of sunlight. He barked and yipped, his voice echoing in the open field. But then, pop, a large bubble landed right on his nose. Biscuit froze, his eyes popping wide. He could feel the coolness of the bubble on his fur, but he couldn't see anything. He sneezed, trying to clear his vision, and blinked, wondering what had happened. Then he saw it, his reflection staring back at him with big, surprised eyes. For a moment, Biscuit just stood there, nose bubble up, looking at the strange dog staring back at him. He barked, then yelped when his own reflection barked back. Startled, he shook his head, sending the bubble flying. He chased it, then skidded to a halt when he saw another bubble floating toward him. This one was even bigger than the last. Biscuit stood his ground, watching as it approached. He sniffed the air, then took a step back. The bubble floated closer, filling his vision with its iridescent glow. And just as it reached him, pop, it burst, sending a shower of tiny bubbles into the air. Blinking, Biscuit looked around, confused. Had the bubble just vanished? Had he imagined the whole thing? He sniffed the ground, but there was no trace of the bubble left. He tilted his head, wondering where it had gone. And that's when he saw it, a small bubble floating on the end of a blade of grass. He looked closer and saw hundreds more, each one shimmering in the sunlight. Biscuit felt a surge of excitement. He took off, racing across the field, diving under branches, and leaping over logs. The bubbles floated just out of his reach, dancing in the summer breeze. He barked and yipped, his voice echoing in the woods. And as he ran, he felt a sense of freedom, a feeling of pure joy. But then, pop, a large bubble landed on his nose, blocking his vision. Startled, Biscuit stumbled, then shook his head, trying to clear his eyes. He blinked and saw the bubble floating in front of him. He sniffed it, then took a tentative lick. It tasted like sweet strawberries and creamy vanilla, like bubble gum and cotton candy clouds. Biscuit licked his lips, then looked around. Where had the bubble come from? Where did it go? That's when he saw it, a trail of tiny bubbles leading through the trees. He followed, his nose twitching with curiosity. And as he walked, he felt a sense of wonder, a feeling of pure delight. He emerged into a clearing and stopped in his tracks. There in front of him was a giant bubble, floating like a balloon in the sky. It shimmered in the sunlight, beckoning him closer. Biscuit hesitated, then took off, racing across the clearing, leaping and twirling in the air. He barked excitedly, urging the bubble to stay longer. And the children followed, their laughter echoing in the woods. Biscuit ran until he couldn't run anymore. He collapsed on the ground, his breathing heavy, his paws aching. He looked up at the sky, wondering where the bubble had gone. And that's when he saw it, a single bubble floating above him. It shimmered in the sunlight, sparkling like a diamond in the sky. Biscuit closed his eyes, smiled, and let the sunshine warm his fur. He didn't need bubbles or games or adventures. All he needed was the love of his family and the warmth of the sun on his back. And as the afternoon wore on, Biscuit felt a sense of contentment, a feeling of pure bliss. He lay on his back, watching the clouds drift by, his big eyes sparkling with wonder.